You're listening to Cars and Coffee, your local home for IndyCar, Formula One, and sports car racing news.
Here on 91.3 WHJE.
And now, here's your host, Nathan Ward. Sprawling through the streets of one of the largest sports complexes in America, the third race of the 2026 NTT IndyCar Series takes us to the first of three brand new events for the year, the 2026 Java House Grand Prix of Arlington. Joseph Newgarden comes in with a slim 5-point lead in the championship over Kyle Kirkwood, and in a race with so many unknowns where anything can happen, points are going to be the name of the game today. Welcome to Cars and Coffee Pre-Race here on 91.3 WHJE. My name is Nathan Ward, and today we're going to take you through the major storylines headed into this massive new event in one of the largest metro areas in the United States. This event was announced back in 2024 in cooperation with both the Dallas Cowboys NFL team and the Texas Rangers MLB team to create a brand new marquee street racing event in the heart of Texas. This race has had the most hype around it I've ever personally seen for a street course race, and it's a track that may produce some wildcard results. Before we get started on how we got here and review last week's events at Phoenix, here's how you can keep up with the show on Instagram and reach out to me to become a guest. Want to get in touch with the show? Head over to the Cars and Coffee Instagram page at carsandcoffee_WHJE and send us a message. That's at carsandcoffee_WHJE. I'll try to answer as many messages as possible. Coming out of Phoenix, with the IndyCar Series has had its first new championship leader since June of 2024. With Alex Palou crashing out of the Good Ranchers 250 very early on in the race, Phoenix winner Joseph Newgarden now takes the points lead after 2 of 18 races. Last weekend's doubleheader with NASCAR seemed to be a win for all parties involved. IndyCar had the most consistent race-to-race TV viewership in years, even beating the viewership of the NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race later that night. The IndyCars felt right at home, honestly, for a track that was originally built for them. Racer.com writer Marshall Pruitt said in a post-race article that, quote, "For fans of a certain age, this was 1986 when Run DMC invited Aerosmith on to Walk This Way, which shouldn't have worked, but did, and created a new music genre, or for something this century, it was 2004 with Jay-Z and Linkin Park teaming up on 99 Problems. Although the potential for grand failure was there, the relationship and differing styles complemented each other in ways that are worth ongoing exploration," end quote. Phoenix fulfilled several major needs for the series, in my opinion. The schedule was desperate for an oval race before the Indy 500, and having Phoenix immediately after the season opener increased fan retention on TV, and along with Arlington, filled the huge gap from the season opener to the next race, which would have been Barber, nearly a month later. The crowd at Phoenix was also fantastic, considering the barren grandstands, frankly, that were seen in the series' previous visits there in 2016, 2017, and 2018. I don't know, some fans that have just gotten into the series may not know how sketchy IndyCar ovals looked, from post-split, I think, till the acquisition of the series by Roger Penske. Nobody showed up to oval races. That's the reason that Auto Club Speedway is dead. No one showed up to the IndyCar race because they moved it to a Saturday in June in Southern California. You have Phoenix. Nobody showed up to Phoenix when they went back. Maybe 15,000 people max at a track that can hold 45,000. Phoenix this week, I don't think we got to 100% crowd capacity, but we absolutely got to probably 80%. It looked lively. It looked exciting. It was full of life. And now, instead of risking another runaway championship lead, the series now has an epic fight about to take place this weekend on the streets of Arlington. And 2 weeks later, we will go to Birmingham, Alabama, at Barber Motorsports Park as Palou tries to improve from 5th in the standings. Alex Palou is not the championship leader for the first time since June of 2024. He has held this series hostage, essentially, with the amount of success that he has had. I believe that the wild card that was Phoenix, with a lot of these drivers having never been to Phoenix before, that caused everyone to bunch up in the championship because the results were so jumbled up. And I think that's going to be awesome leading into the rest of the season so we have a true championship fight. As Marshall Pruitt said to a few IndyCar executives at Phoenix, finding a second oval to use before Indy would be cool, but it's not likely. You don't want to overload the schedule with NASCAR collaboration events. You don't want, and there's only so many that you can do. There's only so many tracks that Fox covers both NASCAR and IndyCar. So Fox's segment of NASCAR goes from Daytona 500 in February to the weekend of the All-Star race, which is at Dover this year for some reason, at I believe it's qualifying weekend for the Indy 500. So that's the third weekend of May. The weekend after Mother's Day is Fox's final race on NASCAR now. The logistics or the willingness to have 2 or more doubleheader events within that time span may not be there. But the success of the event at Phoenix is bound to catch the attention of other tracks looking to attract larger crowds. And out of the tracks that that Fox broadcasts NASCAR races from in this first section of the year, I have narrowed it down to really one track, and that's Kansas Speedway. The spring date for the Cup Series falls in late April. Kansas has 2 races, one in the spring and one in the fall that's in the Chase now. It's, I want to say like it's like the second or third race of the Chase. But the O'Reilly Series and the Arca Menard Series support the spring race, and the Truck Series supports the fall race. With that packed of a weekend in the spring, you could, in theory, move the O'Reilly Series to the fall date and not have to switch much around. You just move an off week to earlier in the year, and you put another race in the Chase. You jumble up the Chase a little bit later in the year by knocking one race out and putting another race in. That's not the end of the world. They do that all the time. You have ARCA, which really doesn't get in the way of anything. It didn't get in the way of anything at Phoenix last week, so ARCA can stay. In theory, you could move the O'Reilly Series to the fall date where they don't already compete, and then put IndyCar on that Saturday night before the Cup race, because Kansas Speedway has lights. That way, not only does IndyCar gain another oval, it gains more exposure from being on another NASCAR weekend, but it gains another super speedway to give rookies more valuable big oval experience right before the start of the month of May and preparation for the Indy 500. There's a lot to take away from this Phoenix weekend. I personally had my expectations blown way out of the water by the quality of the racing and the size of the crowd that showed up to see it. Overwhelmingly positive, I don't know what the word is, overly positive reception from fans, drivers, track people, journalists, everyone. I don't think a single person came out of Phoenix angry, except for people that get really stuck up on the broadcast for some reason. Because there were a few minor blips with the broadcast. Of course, Fox is only in its second year of broadcasting IndyCar. It does broadcast NASCAR, so you would think that they'd be able to build a working ticker, but the ticker that is shown on the TV that shows the running order has been flawed, to put it lightly. There have been multiple incidents where the ticker has stopped updating, and overall there have been a lot of timing and scoring kinks that have gradually been worked out throughout the 2025 season, but they still show up every once in a while here in Fox's second year of broadcasting IndyCar. But overall, I was blown away by Phoenix. That race was so much fun. I really want to see them go to Kansas because I really miss IndyCar going to mile-and-a-half ovals in general, to going to super speedways, and I think going back to Kansas for the first time since 2010 would be awesome. And I think that would be a pretty good drawing point for a race in a market that a lot of people tend to overlook. Kansas City is it's a big city. It's a big sports city. And NASCAR actually gets a pretty decent crowd for both Kansas races. So hopefully you can extend that out to a Saturday night event to see IndyCars ripping it around the high banks of Kansas Speedway. That's my dream. I really hope that happens, but honestly, the return of any super speedway other than Indianapolis is very far from ever happening. But overall, Phoenix is an amazing start. Good to see, good to have an oval before the 500 again. For more highlights and other personal projects of mine, you can check us out on YouTube right here. Want more racing news and highlights along with full show replays?
241.428 miles an hour.
Head over to the This Week in Racing YouTube channel so you never miss an episode of Cars and Coffee and highlights from your favorite racing series. Just go to youtube.com/@TWIRvids. When we come back, we'll take a look at some of the other headlines looking in to the Java House Grand Prix of Arlington. You're listening to Cars and Coffee pre-race coverage of the inaugural Java House Grand Prix of Arlington here on 91.3 WHJE. We're going to go to a quick song break. Here's Any Major Dude by Steely Dan. Don't go away. Cars and Coffee will be right back on 91.3 WHJE. Hi, if you're listening to this, that means you're listening to a replay of today's show. I just want to say thank you for listening and make sure to subscribe to the This Week in Racing YouTube channel so you never miss another episode of Cars and Coffee, along with highlights from your favorite motorsport series. If you're listening on the WHJE website, go to youtube.com/@TWIRvids. If you're listening to this on YouTube, just click the button below. Thank you so much for listening. Now, let's get back to the show. We now return to Cars and Coffee here on 91.3 WHJE. Welcome back to Cars and Coffee pre-race coverage of the Java House Grand Prix of Arlington. Before we get started with the remainder of our news segment here, I want to acknowledge Racer.com editor Marshall Pruitt, whose wife Chabral is once again battling breast cancer. Marshall has been a critical pillar of the American motorsports journalism world longer than I've been alive, and Chabral has been fighting this battle on and off since 2018. They've set up a GoFundMe, which has already raised 80% of their goal, and they've gathered the support of pretty much all of the IndyCar paddock this weekend. And if you're feeling generous and want to help Marshall and Chabral continue the fight, go to our Instagram and click the link in the GoFundMe on our story that I'll put up after the show. And if you're listening on YouTube, I'll put the link to the GoFundMe at the top of the description below. Back onto the topic of the Arlington track. The first thing I noticed was just how bumpy it is. Yes, the track is a parking lot, essentially, but when they did a full lap around the track with Alexander Rossi in Friday practice, the nearly 1 mile back straight is incredibly bumpy. Like, I don't know how we're not breaking backs this week. It's very reminiscent of the front straightaway at the Camden Yards Street Circuit in Baltimore when IndyCar went to Baltimore in the early 2010s. That track was actually so bumpy, and it included a railroad track, or like you had to go over the railroad tracks. The track was so bumpy they had to put a tire chicane on the front stretch mid-weekend, and it got really, really dumb. It was kind of a poorly designed street circuit, but it was very silly. In general, Arlington I think is better designed, but I wouldn't rule out a repave before next year, or at least a dedicated repave on the parts of the parking lot that are actual racetrack, or the roads that they use surrounding AT&T Stadium, and I don't even remember what the Ranger Stadium's called. Looking ahead to the Indianapolis 500, Connor Daly has been confirmed alongside Jack Harvey at Dreyer and Reinbold Racing, presumably driving the 23 car because Jack Harvey drove the 24 last year. The Noblesville native now brings the number of confirmed entries solidly at 30, leaving questions about a fourth Andretti Global entry, a fourth Rahal Letterman Lanigan entry, which still hasn't been confirmed yet, and the status of the two Prema racing cars, which would bring us up to the exact field of 34 we had last year of one driver going home. I would not be surprised if the Andretti entry and the RLL entry are confirmed within the next month, and when it comes down to Prema, I wouldn't be surprised if the rest of the paddock attempts to crowdfund one of the Prema cars to make the grid, to make it 33 cars at least. Kind of like what Dragon Speed had to do in 2022 with Stephen Wilson. They borrowed a lot of equipment from other teams to get that 33rd car rolling. And yeah, it was far slower than most of the rest of the field, but it was there. And the important part is we have 33 cars. So I wouldn't be surprised if it gets really dire that the paddock will help not crowdfund, but will donate equipment to Prema to make the Indy 500 with at least one car. If Prema is in no position to make the race at all, they still have their cars, they still have their equipment, they just don't have money. If Prema is in no position to make the race at all, I don't know what the prevailing theory is on how we get that 33rd car, but I wouldn't be surprised if Chevrolet essentially goes out and says, hey, we got 2 engine leases here, highest bidder, who wants them? And I think that's how we get the field to 33 or 34, because either you have the 2 Prema cars, or you have 2 teams that are, or you have groups of teams that are competing for these 2 Chevrolet engine leases that will be essentially, most likely, up for lease if Prema is unable to make the rest of the season. Even further down the road, the track layout for the Freedom 250 Grand Prix in Washington, D.C. was revealed on Monday, with 7 turns and 1.66 miles to cover per lap. The course has a long straight measuring 0.4 miles on Pennsylvania Avenue itself, runs around the National Mall, and will welcome fans for the one-time celebration of the country's 250th birthday. For the unveiling, IndyCar wrapped a Dallara DW12 with a custom Freedom 250 livery that was presented by the dignitaries in attendance, led by Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy, Secretary of the Interior Doug Burgum, Ambassador Monica Crowley, Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser, and Freedom 250 Chairman Bud Denker of Penske Entertainment. I'm really excited for this race. Yeah, the course is not the most intricate of racing circuits ever designed, but the fact that we are going to be racing this summer on the streets of Washington, D.C. is incredible. And where we're racing, it's not just the outskirts of D.C. It's not only is it actually within the territory of D.C., it's within the National Mall. The pit straight is on Pennsylvania Avenue, just down the road from the White House. The start-finish line is in front of Capitol Hill on 3rd Street, and the track goes past the National Archives, the National Gallery of Art, the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum. So much history encompassing just a 1.6 mile track. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be so fun. And I am super duper excited for this summer on August 23rd when IndyCar heads to Washington, D.C. This week's qualifying procedure for the Grand Prix of Arlington was slightly updated compared to other road and street courses. The Firestone Fast 6, the session that decides the pole sitter, was changed from a free-for-all session to a one-shot session where each driver gets 1 lap to go for pole. This change proved positive for Marcus Ericsson, who took his first pole of his IndyCar career yesterday afternoon. Joseph Newgarden's team was forced to quickly prepare their backup car before qualifying after Newgarden hit a bump on the track at a weird angle. Newgarden was unhurt and his car appeared to be easily repairable, but when they rolled it back to the garage, the team found a hole in the tub that had been pierced by the front wing as it folded back during the contact, and it compromised the tub in the front of the lower front suspension mounting point. This led to Newgarden's number 2 Chevy being in a Frankenstein livery for qualifying, with PPG logos pasted across the white and yellow XPEL wrap that was raced at Phoenix. Overall, driver perception of the Arlington course, much like Phoenix, has been overwhelmingly positive. Team Penske Scott McLaughlin, who has countless combined street course wins across Australia, New Zealand, and Tasmania, as well as IndyCar, said that, quote, "This is instantly my favorite street circuit ever," after Friday practice. Alex Palou said that, quote, "I love it. Yeah, it's insane. It's super fun to drive. It's just a lot more fun than I thought, just how the car feels. There's so many different corners. Like, there's corners where you can attack, you feel like a superhero, but there's other corners where you need to back off because the grip is very different. It's very bumpy, a lot more bumpy than I thought, which makes it super challenging, but super fun," end quote. I'm super excited for the race that's going to happen in about 7 minutes. They moved the start time up because of high winds that will hit Texas and most of the country later tonight. Before we head to our track preview, let's take a look at our starting grid. On pole position is the number 28 Andretti Global Honda of Marcus Ericsson, the first pole position of his career and his first pole position of his IndyCar career and his first pole position at all since the 2013 Formula 2 round at Silverstone, a race which IndyCar commentator Will Buxton was in the booth for. Starting alongside him is defending champ Alex Palou. Third and fourth are Pato O'Ward and Andretti Global's Will Power. Row 3 is made up of the Meyershank Racing teammates of Felix Rosenqvist and Marcus Armstrong. Kyle Kirkwood and Christian Rasmussen make up row 4, while rounding out the top 10 are David Malukas and Alexander Rossi. Joseph Newgarden was eliminated in the top 12 and will start 11th alongside Santino Ferrucci on row 6. Row 7 is made up of Louis Foster and Kiffin Simpson. 15th is Romain Grosjean. 16th is the first of the rookies, Kyle Collette. Another rookie right behind him in 17th, the number 47 of Mick Schumacher, and 18th is the number 7 of Christian Lundgaard. Last of the rookies in 19th is car number 19 of Dennis Hauger, with Scott Dixon starting behind him in 20th. Rinus VeeKay and Nolan Siegel wrap up row 11 in 21st and 22nd. Stingray Robb starts 23rd, Graham Rahal 24th, and 25th and last is Scott McLaughlin, who crashed in qualifying and had his lap times disallowed. When we come back, we will preview the racetrack itself, look for potential hotspots, problem areas, and more in this week's track preview. You're listening to Cars and Coffee pre-race here before the Java House Grand Prix of Arlington, here on 91.3 WHJE Carmel. Don't go away. Cars and Coffee will be right back on 91.3 WHJE. Hi, if you're listening to this, that means you're listening to a replay of today's show. I just want to say thank you for listening and make sure to subscribe to the This Week in Racing YouTube channel so you never miss another episode of Cars and Coffee, along with highlights from your favorite motorsport series. If you're listening on the WHJE website, go to youtube.com/@TWIRvids. If you're listening to this on YouTube, just click the button below. Thank you so much for listening. Now, let's get back to the show. We now return to Cars and Coffee here on 91.3 WHJE. Welcome back to Cars and Coffee pre-race coverage of the 2026 Java House Grand Prix of Arlington. Here is our track preview of the AT&T Stadium Street Circuit. The 2.73-mile Arlington Grand Prix circuit begins on a very narrow front stretch before a tight left-right-left where the circuit merges with pit out. Turn 3 opens up onto westbound Randall Mill Road. From there, drivers ride the bumps down to the heavy braking zone at Turn 4, which has presented itself as a problem area all weekend. The left-hand hairpin at Turn 4 is followed by a more open right-handed 180 at Turn 5, before opening out into a wide carousel that surrounds the concert stage area. The horseshoe, as it's called, comes to an end at Turn 7 and 8, before Turn 9, nicknamed Cowboy Corner, leads the drivers onto the nearly 1 mile back straightaway that is anything but straight. As the cars blast down the other side of Randall Mill Road at nearly 190 miles an hour, the bumps unsettle the car multiple times per second until the heavy braking zone at Turn 10. The cars then head up through the kink at Turn 11 towards the Rangers Stadium, and turn right onto Cowboys Way at Turn 12. Turn 13 is another flat corner before Turn 14 leads you back onto the front stretch and pit entry. I've taken some notes here. There are 4 major takeaways about the Arlington track right now. The paint is fair game. The track limits are the walls. Yes, there is decorative paint and decorative curbs on the track surface itself. They aren't the track limits. You can go below the curbs into the paint anywhere you want. The walls are the limits, and I think that is going to provide an extra fun factor for this race today. It's going to look very silly, and it's going to cause some probably very silly racing. The pit lane is double-sided, something we've gotten used to at the streets of Detroit. Now, underneath the Renaissance Center, probably won't be for much longer, but for a compact paddock, they have made the pit lane double-sided. There are so many blind corners on this track. Just the way the track is, with very little elevation change, there are so many blind corners, and I think that's going to catch a lot of people off guard this weekend. But what's going to catch a lot of fans off guard, if they don't know about it, the race will start on the backstretch between turns 9 and 10 on eastbound Randall Mill Road. That is going to be a very, very hairy situation in turn 10 on the opening lap of the race. I think turn 10 is going to be the biggest problem spot of the day because of the closing speed, and potentially the bumps will mess with the brakes. That's just something that's going to happen. Someone will get it wrong at some point in the weekend, and we might have an issue. Debuting today is my new Pick 5 system, where I pick 4 contenders and 1 dark horse driver for each race that I cover. For the Java House Grand Prix of Arlington, my 4 contenders are Marcus Ericsson, Alex Palou, Felix Rosenqvist, and Kyle Kirkwood. My dark horse pick, my 5th driver, is Alexander Rossi, who, checking my notes again, starts 10th. So, absolutely not. Nobody is out of it yet. The race is yet to start, but those are my 5 drivers that I have picked for this weekend's Grand Prix of Arlington. With the race about to start, we will conclude our special pre-race edition of Cars and Coffee here on 91.3 WHJE. To tune into the race, go to Fox Network or 93 WIBC to listen to the wonderful people at IndyCar Radio. My name is Nathan Ward, and thank you for listening to Cars and Coffee IndyCar pre-race. Tune in next Sunday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time for regular programming from Cars and Coffee here on 91.3 WHJE Carmel.